Good. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
It's
morning.
Friday. I
It
hope
is
you're all
Friday.
exhausted the way we are.
Yes, like a good beat down old Ford pickup.
Yeah.
America.
Ford. You know, I not to get too much into it, but this is the first Ford truck I've ever had.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was always a Chevy guy before that. Ford's doing okay.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of shocked after all of the lambasting that my friends have given me about having a Ford.
Well, I mean, I feel like in Texas there's a couple things you need to do. Be a man.
Be a man.
Get a
Sorry,
truck.
ladies.
Get a truck. And then get the right truck.
The right truck.
The rat truck.
Is that just a big? Is it just a big
The
truck?
louder, the bigger, the better. You need to uselessly lift it, and then you need to have the biggest towing capacity you can have, but then never actually put anything in your bed because then you'll scratch the paint.
Yeah, yeah, or you get it like rhino lined as if you're ever gonna carry anything in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the Bo Burnham country pandering song?
No.
Oh, okay. We gotta link that one. I was gonna look it up, but I'll have my friend look it up for me. It's called "Country Pandering" on by Bo Burnham on YouTube. We'll share that one with the chat because it's a fun one. Bo Burnham's a comedian. I think you probably heard.
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
But he in this song he makes fun of. I don't know if he uses the word or if someone else uses this word, but metrosexual country, if you will. And he kind of like talks about how they go into all the stereotypes. And I mean, just to give an example, I think the first opening line is like a cold beer, a 6-pack, a hot woman in my truck, something like that, right?
Yeah, that's about right. That's the dream.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
A 6-pack in your truck.
yeah, exactly. We all know where that 6-pack ain't, though, brother. Am I
No,
right?
that's true.
One too many Bud
yeah.
Lights. All right, that's enough of our Ford
Okay, sorry,
escapades.
yeah.
Welcome. Oh, there's other people here. Hello.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going? So welcome to What the Hell is Water. Today is December 3rd. 2021. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's give a writer close-up. We haven't done one of those in a while. That's pretty good. I'm Reed Garcia, founder of Helpful for Life.
This is Ryder Richards, couch sitter.
Couch sitter, yes. And yesterday, what did we do yesterday, Ryder?
We had Angela on from Angela Pone, I think.
It looks like that. Poen, but you say it
man.
Poon. You know,
Okay.
it's I'm not gonna go
Yo,
further on that one.
let's just
We're gonna leave
move
it at that.
skate on by
Angela
that.
Poon, and so she is the executive director and founder of the nonprofit Community Garden Kitchen of Collin County, and it's a cause near and dear to my heart because I happen to live in Collin County, in the city of McKinney, and she, as we talked about yesterday. She told us a little bit of her journey over the last almost 7 years of how she's raised $1 million to build this building to the point where they don't have a mortgage or ongoing cost related to that. It's just now they're paying operation costs, you know?
Yeah, so when you donate or volunteer, then your efforts are going directly to helping people.
Which is great because they're looking to end food insecurity here in Collin County. And for those of you who are like, well, what the heck is food insecurity? Well, we talked about that yesterday. But in brief, it's, when you don't necessarily know where that next meal is going to come from. And we talked a little bit yesterday about how big of an impact that can have on people because it doesn't just affect like your body, but it affects your mind and your soul. And Angela was talking about some of the people she's met who decades later, she can still see that they're affected by this thing. And so it's a really serious thing. And, living in America, especially living in a upper middle class, city, it feels like, hey, this is something we can figure out.
Yeah, we can figure it out. The other thing is we tend to be a little bit blind to it, thinking that because we live here, then everyone's like us.
Right. And another thing I want to point out, some people may be like, well, Reed, why would we help, people in this nice suburb versus helping people who are in more need, right? And, well, one of the nice things is she's looking to do with Community Garden Kitchen, she's looking to think it through from the user perspective and the whole experience from beginning to end, and how can we do it in a way where it is not producing shame or those negative feelings that come with asking for help sometimes. And she's looking to do it in a sustainable way as well, and she's looking to do it in a way where the model can be replicated in other communities. So even though you might argue this isn't the community that needs it the most, well, maybe by getting the people who are involved with this problem here and helping with this set here, we can help other people do this elsewhere in other communities.
Yeah, there's also sort of a strange thing of always thinking that the worst trouble is somewhere else. And it's just sort of it's almost a logical fallacy. Like, you can help out locally where you are. There's still problems and they're still real.
Yeah, and then another aspect we talked about is how when you're helping with those problems, it's not just a one-way street. You're helping people, but that can actually help make you a better person, can make you feel better, which is okay. You don't need to feel bad about feeling good about helping people. If anything, it helps you want to do it more.
Yeah, embrace that feeling good. Like,
yeah,
own it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was yesterday, and today, actually, one last note on yesterday, we were talking a little bit about how right now she's in the middle of trying to raise money. She talked about how intimidating it was when she first went to go raise money from some corporate people, and she went up in the big tall building and went up all the high floors, and then she walks into the boardroom, everyone's all in suits and all serious, and she's like, oh, and then someone started crying, and we're like, well, you'll have to watch the episode to see if that was a good thing or a bad thing. But yeah, so right now she's in the middle of a campaign called Fill the Fridge and Pack the Pantry. And the link for those of you who are interested, we'll put in the chat, is communitygardenkitchen.org. I got it right today. / fill the fridge with dashes in between. Fill the fridge.
Dash.
Yes.
No
and
slash.
No slashes. We'll put that in the chat for you guys. But you can go there and you can donate to help fill the fridge and pack the pantry, because now their building is built and they need money so they can buy the food they need, so the chef can prepare these meals in a restaurant-like environment for people who are in need, so they can dine with dignity. So that's what we talked about yesterday, and then we only kind of scratched the surface, but there's an inherent problem. Well, now she's built something, right? So she has this building and she has this nonprofit, and now the part is, okay, I got to get some more money to help it run. And I've got to also get the word out so people who need to know about it can learn about it, so they can use it, and also the people who we need to help can help. Well, that sounds a lot like marketing to me.
Yeah, it does. And that's something we need to get into at some point not only what is marketing, but how the heck do you do it and do it well?
Yeah, and that's one of the things at Helpful for Life. We are right in the middle of this prime stage, because now, just, full transparency with all of you guys, we're on episode 47, which, I think that deserves one of these, the fake applause. Thank you. Yeah, and then some real applause. Thank you. And then one of these. All right, I think we're good now. So we're on episode 47.
Yeah. Once again, own those good feelings.
Yeah, well, sometimes you got to do that, because, when you look at the view count and you're like, oh, there's, 1, 2, 3, 4 viewers on right now, which we love, right? But we just have this feeling inside, like, we know what we're doing here is something special, and we want to get it to more people, right? And there's that inherent gap where it's like, I know that we can help people, and what we're doing is a good message, and, and then also kind of selfishly, it's like, I know we're better than what a lot of people are consuming, I'm like, come on, just watch us instead. Come on.
Quit watching the Kardashians.
Yeah,
watch
exactly. But there's this inherent gap between, all right, we made a thing, we know it's good, and then we want the rest of the world to see it. And that's a tough gap to deal with, especially when you're dealing with it every day. And, especially in the online communities that I'm involved with, we're talking with other entrepreneurs who are also creating things, and they're like, man, I do this, podcast after podcast or YouTube after YouTube, and it's tough because I don't see these numbers. And then on top of that, there's the expectations, right, of what can be and what could be. And you see all these examples of people like, well, that person started from nothing and now they've got 75 million views and they've fed 17 countries with their extra money and, all those types of things. Yeah. And you're like, I just want to be that. Yeah, I'll settle for 5 countries.
I love how they always pull the success story and be like, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's a little more complicated than that.
It is a little more complicated than that, but we want to share a little bit with you guys out there of what it actually takes to do that thing, right? And so it depends on the order. Step one sometimes can be building the thing, but an actual better step sometimes is to find the audience and then build the thing. But there's a little bit of chicken egg thing. How do I find an audience if I don't have anything to show them, and how do I, so it's kind of like, what do I do? And so today we have a guest on with us. His name is Hunter Hodnett. We'll get to him in a second, but he's kind of someone who's going through this journey himself and his entrepreneurship journey, and we're going to learn a little bit more about him in a second. But until we get there, let's just do a good old one of these. Helpful for life. Welcome to What the Hell is Water. I'm Reed Garcia, founder of Helpful for Life.
Ryder Richards, founder of all sorts of things. But we don't have enough time to get into it.
Yes.
Big time CEO founder over here on the couch. Yeah. Yes. Not to toot my own horn, but
yeah,
just go around founding all over the place.
Yeah. What did you do today? Oh, I found it. Yesterday. So as part of this marketing, so we now have these 40. Well, today is 47. But we also did this whole thing where we started counting from 0, which, if you've ever done coding, it makes sense, but it's still confusing. It's like, technically today is 47, but we've already done 48 episodes. Plus 1. You got to always remember that plus 1.
Yeah, well, that 0 thing sort of screws everybody up.
It really does.
Eventually it's going to be 5,000 episodes, and then no one's really going to care.
No one's really going to care. That's what I like to hear. Yeah. And so as we've made, these 47 hour-ish long shows, we knew going in, but we've also had this realization from looking at the numbers. If you don't change the title away from the name of this show, and you don't change the description away from some basic description that doesn't really describe it, and you don't change the thumbnail, and then you blather on for an hour with two guys, like, not everyone is just going to want to naturally click on that and watch it.
It's so weird.
I don't understand why.
I don't either.
I don't get it.
We have 37 of the same thumbnails, and it's just Reed and I blathering the whole time. I don't know. I would just randomly click on any of those.
I know. Why not?
Great time.
Yeah. But that's what we're going through right now. Is we're going through and we're slicing it all up, kind of like this.
So
this is how I slice.
So fast.
I've
been taking classes.
Yeah, I have. Let me tell you about that. No, shameless plug. So we're taking those hour-long clips and we're turning it into clips, shorter clips, so people can share it, and so we can be like, hey, sister, here's this part that I think would be really valuable to you. Or, hey, mother-in-law, like, here's this annoying thing that you've done. I mean, here are these people that are talking about this topic that you might find useful.
Yes. I like it. I mean, it's one of the things I also do with my own podcast, because honestly, no one wants to listen to me for 30 minutes straight. So it's like, but I sometimes will have like one moment, like maybe at 30 seconds, where I'm not a complete bumbling idiot. And I'm like, oh, chop that out. Let's highlight that.
Yes, and, I do this for you guys. You don't want to sit here and listen to him for more than 30 minutes every day. I got to sit here for twice that long.
Once again.
We're just hoping for that little thing, and
we're waiting for that one moment.
Yes, it'll come eventually.
The stars align.
Yeah, it'll come eventually.
Yeah, even a blind pig. Yeah, acorns and stuff.
So chopping up the things, and then we're going to be sending it out to all of the various social media platforms and encouraging you guys to share it. And I'm really curious to see, and now we're going to get into some of the data analytics, and we can do some things like A/B testing, where we put it out one way and we put it out another way, and we let the people tell us what they like more or what they click on more, because that's a very important distinction. What people like more, or what is more useful to them, and what they'll click on and what they'll watch more are two separate things. And you have to recognize that, because, you can have the best intentions, have the best content over here, but if you don't get it closer to what these people are actually going to click on and watch, then it doesn't really matter. And you might have heard the term clickbait before, which is like kind of a bad thing, but yet you got to use some of those techniques, because, again, we're all caveman at our hearts, and we see a headline that makes us think, or more importantly, feel a certain way. That's what gets us to click on the thing, to follow through.
Yeah, no, there's something about that's it's fascinating, because, of course, coming from the art world, a lot of what we do just becomes super elitist, right? It's sort of like, well, the populace, like, I'm not designing for them, I'm designing for somebody else, right? And so my high design will bring the people that need to come to me, right? And so there becomes this kind of this grouping, and what you can kind of find in design as well is you can target certain audiences with certain looks. and that's also kind of a fun thing to really jump into. And whatever, we can talk more about that
Yeah,
later.
well, we
I just,
can.
yeah.
So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit with our guest today, and we're going to talk a little bit about marketing, and then we're going to see how that conversations go. But we also might talk a little bit about how businesses and nonprofits get funding, because Hunter's has a business of his own, and he's going a little bit of a different method than I am. He's going the venture capital route. I'm going what's called the bootstrap route, for now at least. And then of course the nonprofit is a different model altogether. So we'll talk a little bit about those differences later, because they also tie in with marketing, and marketing obviously ties in with money, and so it's all kind of really connected. So without further ado, let's bring on Hunter. Welcome to the show, Hunter. Good morning.
Good morning. How are y'all doing?
Oh, just fantastically. It's a lovely little setup you got there. I like your TV is backlit.
Thank
I
you.
like that.
I put together something really special for y'all. You can't see what I'm seeing, but it's quite the ridiculous setup to get the camera at just the right
Oh,
angle where
nice.
it's like coming down, and I've got like the moody lighting here coming from my I don't know what you would call it,
Yeah,
but
it's like
yeah, I'm
like
looking very mysterious. I'm feeling the mood right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it, and I got to say, I saw on Instagram the other day you had some professional headshots done, and or at least what looked like professional headshots. Like, oh, hey girls, well, how's it going?
Yeah, there you go. And so, yeah, it kind of ties into that idea of marketing of like, hey, I need to look like someone that people are going to take seriously when I approach them and try to develop strategic partnerships, or if I ask for money. As you mentioned, I'm going the venture capital route, and so I was like, okay, I should probably clean up and get some professional headshots taken and update the LinkedIn profile and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, I believe so. Let me look at a little bit of background on Hunter, because you're maybe like, who is this guy? Where did he come from? Well, Hunter and I actually went
I don't
to
know.
high
I'm kind
school
of liking
together.
the whole mysterious,
Yeah, it
moody
is
lighting
the
thing. Maybe we
moody,
shouldn't
like,
get any backstory.
vagabond. What is he? We might not know. What is his company? We may never find out. But no, Hunter and I actually went to high school together, and it's funny, the way we started talking was Danielle, my wife, was telling me, she's like, oh, hey, there's this guy that, I had a crush on back in fifth grade. And, I was scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and I saw him post something about entrepreneurship, something about entrepreneurship stuff. Like, you should talk to him. I'd be like, okay, I remember Hunter. Like, not very well. No offense, Hunter. It's just like, oh, yeah, I remember him from high school loosely. Like, he was that guy, right? But then I was like, I don't really remember him that well, and that's because he moved away because he was scared.
Oh, you were too much.
I was too much.
You just school couldn't handle both of
School
you.
couldn't handle
Yeah.
both.
It was It was so funny, yeah, because when Reed and I reconnected, so in high school, I don't think I really spoke. I think I was just like really quiet, and I was always sitting at the back of the class. And I think in my first email to Reed when we reconnected, I was like, this might be the most I've ever said to you, probably. And,
Well, one of the
but
other things, Hunter, that I remembered, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you don't still have it, you used to have pretty curly hair. Is that right?
yes, and if it gets long enough, it still curls up
Yeah, well, that
and
was the
becomes
thing,
just a
So
lovely
we're talking
mess.
about marketing and stuff and how you look and to get people to take you seriously. When my hair's growing out, I'm like, all right, I like the curls, but realistically, I do a morning show, and every time I wake up, sometimes they're all over the place, and I'm like, should I do the stereotypical short, nice and easy business professional, or the curly to help represent my softer, more loving
Oh
side?
man, that's a marketing decision right there. What do you
It's
think,
tough.
Hunter?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I feel like y'all are both rocking two beautiful sets of hair heads over there. I don't know. This has
Thank
now
you.
become a weird thing to say. I
Yeah,
think
Yeah.
I think you have
No,
the
no. Tell
branding
us
down.
more
You got to
about
Yeah,
stick
yeah,
with what you
yourselves.
have.
Yeah.
No, I think
No,
I
oh,
think
okay. Let me tell you about your beautiful heads.
yes,
There you
I
go.
think that sounds like a good testimonial right there. Why should you watch this show? Two
Hunter's like,
beautiful heads of hair. Yes. So Hunter, we met, back in high school, and then you moved away and you went and did a couple of other things. So why don't you tell us, what you've been up to since high school and how you got to today? Give us the 2-ish minute version of where you're at.
Yeah, so originally was living in McKinney, moved to Georgia, went through college. I originally wanted to do like theater, and oddly enough, my dad did marketing and customer insights and stuff, and I was like, I want to do that. And my dad gave me a bit of tough love, and he was like, No, you know programming, like this is going to be a big industry, and my parents cut me off at kind of like an early age, and they were like, you have to support yourself, and my dad was like, software engineering, man. He's like, I know I've seen you on the computer, so go do it. And so I was just kind of in survival mode, and I was like, okay, I have to get a good paying job. And I studied software engineering like crazy. I read Cracking the Coding Interview. It helps you land jobs at FANG companies, and um, got a job at Amazon, Amazon Music. They relocated me to San Francisco. Was there for a couple of years, and then I helped them launch Amazon Music Unlimited, and that was how I got familiar with like launching a product internationally, globally, and just kind of took notes on that. Heard the Reddit website was getting rebuilt through some friends, and I was like, oh, I have to be a part of that project, and managed to get an interview and got to help rebuild the Reddit website, and then also got to help monetize it by moving to the ads team. And that was where I got to see all the scary stuff that goes into, okay, how do you chop up an audience, and how do you deliver a specific piece of content to that audience in a programmatic way, which was like really, really cool to see. Um, and then from there, had a big quarter life crisis. I quit my job. I was like, oh, I just want to travel and just be,
Who would
just a
do such a
traveling
thing? Am I
little.
right? Like
Who would
these
ever do such
millennials,
a
just
thing?
so irresponsible.
Just
Goodness.
selling all their stuff and traveling, right?
I
Who
don't
would
know,
ever
man. I
do
think it
that?
sounds great. And like, I remember reading a book a while back that was talking about, and maybe it was even just like Tim Ferriss, but just talking about like taking like these mini retirements
Retirements, yeah.
throughout your life. And I think it's
Oh
great.
yeah, I've done that several times. So this is like, yeah, I've done that probably three times. Like taking, because like 2 weeks is like BS, right? And I feel like we're just expected to take 2 weeks of vacation, pack your 401k full, and you can live life at 65. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
and
I was
it's
like,
really interesting to see,
Yeah.
especially because that varies by country, right? And if you look at why is there a 40-hour work week at all, and it goes all the way back to factory times when people were making widgets and
Yeah, it
like
was just like yeah,
oh yeah,
because 40 hours, or I think it was 60 hours, and actually Ford reduced it to 40 hours. But at 60 hours,
oh
people were just like crushing their hands, and they'd start getting things stuck in widgets, and it was awful.
did you say Ford boy?
Oh,
Whoa, getting excited about that
Chevy
Ford
family
again.
over here.
But yeah, so Hunter, you quit and you went on this traveling, and then what?
Well, that kind of takes me. So this conversation about the 40-hour work week and stuff kind of takes us into what I'm doing now. So I decided I really wanted to help people, right? I became a teacher at a coding boot camp, did that for 2 years, but then realized I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And so I think the 40-hour work week is BS. There's all this there's so much automation, and there's so much value that we've created as a society that, in my opinion, we should all be working like 10 hours a week, and then kind of just enjoying our friends and pursuing creative hobbies. And um, I didn't understand why I couldn't work like 5 to 10 hours a week and just live on less, and or like work for 2 or 3 months and take the rest of the year off and make, software engineering pays really well. So I just didn't understand why that wasn't possible. And I found out it wasn't possible because I started freelancing, and I would work with startups, and I would help them build their initial product. And I was trying to work like 5, 10 hours a week. And as we all know, startups, there's so much work to do. And I tried to involve my friends. I was like, hey, this startup has so much work to do. We're just going to chop this work up, and we're all going to do a small piece. That didn't work. Security concerns, intellectual property concerns. And it just takes a while to get a software engineer ramped up on something. And it was creating a bad experience for my clients. And so I had like just a moment where I just kind of collapsed a little bit. And I was like, maybe I'm not the type of person that should be freelancing. Maybe I'm not cut out for this life. Maybe I should just get a cushy enterprise job and pick up an obscure hobby and just focus on my pottery, focus on my improv comedy, and
Or
like
your
There you go.
mood lighting.
just
That's really
Yeah,
nice.
on
yeah.
my mood lighting.
What do you do?
But I
Mood
was,
lighting
Mood
around my
lighting.
house.
I just set up cameras and things and look all moody. But I was ready to throw in the towel because I thought I was just a really bad freelancer for trying to work part time. And I had this moment where I was just kind of like, okay, I can like pack it in and like give up on this, or like I can do something about this problem that I see. And that was when I was like, oh no, screw that. I'm going to start a company to solve this problem. And so I started a company called Cottage, and we found some emerging technology. There's cloud hosted development environments that are secure. We're partnered with a Swiss startup that is developing a secure cloud hosted development environment. And essentially it allows for kind of like an Uber type of a model for software engineering. You can have these tiny tasks that maybe might take 1 or 2 hours, and you can parcel them out to software engineers, and they can get paid, a few $100 per task. And then that's working the 5 to 10 hour work week. Now you can be on a beach in Tahiti and just pick up a task, pick up as many or as little tasks as you want, and live the type of life that you want. And that's the way I think we should all be living. So that was kind of how I got involved in that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing. And a couple things that I grabbed from that. Well, first one I want to point out for those of you at home who know nothing about coding or aren't technical at all.
I know. Sorry for the buzzwords.
Oh, you're good. That's my job. Is when you're using a product, like you're watching this video right now, right? You're on YouTube, Instagram, not Instagram, whoop, not yet. YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, or Facebook. If you're on any one of these platforms, you're using some software that these companies have developed. And developed is just a fancy way of saying that there were a bunch of people who sat and they wrote some words on their computers and they send it to some centralized computer, and now it does magic that lets you see the thing, right?
Yeah.
And traditionally speaking, this was done. Everyone went into an office and they all did it together. And then over time that, people started working at different offices remotely. And then, of course, with COVID, coding was one of those things that was always a little bit more remote than your average job. But, with COVID, that's stretched even more now, right? And there's all sorts of broader implications of what this means is, are people going to go back to the office? And then you have places like San Francisco, which are, insanely expensive, but there are so many companies there and there's so many venture capitalists there that, and there's something about being around there, right? Like you don't just, I heard Reddit was about to have a redesign, without being in those circles and being aware and being able to say like, hey, friend of a friend of a friend or whatever, or a person I met at this happy hour or whatnot. That's part of the magic you get from being local in that way. But so that was one thing I wanted to also say, that, this cloud-based development means that people can work from wherever, and they don't even have to be a full-time employee. They can do this part-time work on something. But then say a company like Reddit, for example, some of their concerns are, well, why would I trust Reed and Ryder to work on this stuff? And how do I know they're not going to take the keys to the castles and run away with it? And so what Hunter has done is he's worked with this company overseas, and they have a platform that allows people to securely basically check out just the things that they need while it protects the privacy of that company, so they can more comfortably dole out that work. And Hunter, do you want to modify that at all?
Not at all. I mean, it's like yeah, that's exactly it. I'm like, oh, like someone gets what we're doing. It's like always really, really nice to hear your own business explained so accurately. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Cool. I'm glad that I got that one. So when it comes to, marketing, one other thing I wanted to point out was, as a freelancer, marketing, you don't realize it, but part of your job is doing the thing, and then part of it is marketing. You've got to market yourself. You got to find these jobs. You got to deal with these clients, and I've talked with Ryder a little bit about clients, and he says they're all great and magical, and they have no problems at
Yeah,
all.
none. I mean, they just really show up and say, I just give you money to do whatever you want to do anyway? I mean, that's what always happens.
And then they're
to
like,
me.
"Hey, do you want some
Yeah.
extra money?
Yeah,
Why not?"
because you're just buckets of money for
Yeah.
you to just like.
And the scope of work I told you, this is what you're gonna do, and here's the timeline. Yeah, it's gonna take. Actually, you have more time, and here's more money. That's how it normally happens, right?
You know what's really funny about that is I'm in the middle of a project right now that was supposed to take like 6 weeks. We're going on a year. It's just become almost a joke at this point. And the funny thing about it is they aren't concerned about the money. They're just really slow. They like to shop everything around, talk to all their friends. Like every time we do an iteration of something, then they just want to share it. And it's like, that's fine.
Your
I
money.
guess. It's actually kind of I shouldn't be complaining about it. It's not a bad problem to have. It's just that it's always sort of catching in the back of your head. You're like, I wish I could move on to that next thing. I wish we could just wrap this up so I could move. And at the same time, I'm like, why do I want to move? Like they keep paying me and I already understand what we're doing. So anyway, just a little tidbit about clients. Is sometimes you just have to shift your perspective to sort of work with them.
And for those of you at home, the first half of that whole conversation was all sarcasm. Clients that come with all kinds of problems.
No, I mean, of course, that's why they're coming to you, right? Is because, like, what good are you unless you can solve somebody else's problem? That's a lot of time that is the value that you add. And so, yeah, they're going to show up with problems. You're supposed to solve them. And then whatever way you think you want to solve them, almost inevitably, the client will want something different.
Yeah. And Hunter, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but having talked to you, I think you can relate to some of these gripes, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Are you kidding? And so it's a completely different skill set. Managing clients is a completely different skill. And I can definitely relate to wanting to move on to that next project. I'm someone who loves novelty and loves the next thing. And oftentimes when you start working with a client, you build up so much context with that client, and there's kind of like a locking in that happens. And something that I've experimented with was like, okay, how do I transfer this context to another freelancer that I've taught? So I try to take my friends with me that want to do freelancing, and I try to teach them, and then I try to hand things off to them. And that process can be really, really difficult. And so that's another angle that's another thing that I'm trying to solve with this company. But, I love what you're doing with Helpful for Life, because there are these situations where you just need like a paved path to something, right? Like you need to hear from someone who has walked that path before, and then that person needs to kind of give you a guide, right? So I'm in the middle of creating like a freelancing guide of like how to manage expectations with clients, because it's like you may think you're a great software engineer, and you may be, but it doesn't matter. Like you're developing a completely separate skill set.
Yeah, and creating the quote unquote boring term for it is policies and procedures. And depending on who you are, if you hear those words, a lot of people are like, those are gross, I don't ever touch with those. But the reality is they need to happen, and because especially when you're doing something where, all right, here is a task that needs to be done, and then there's going to be a whole variety of people working on it. So yesterday when we were talking about a nonprofit, one of the challenges of running a nonprofit is you're dealing with volunteers, kind of like we alluded to yesterday, and you don't really want to fire them. Like you can, but you want to take all the help you can get. But also just inherently a lot of turnover. People come and they help for a while, and then they go on to the next thing, right? And they go on to the next thing, and they're not quite as tied to it because it's not their job. It's something they do on the side, things like that. Well, same kind of thing with freelancing. The whole idea is I'm not going to work with this company for a very long time. I'm just coming in and doing a little bit. So inherently, if you're going to have that type of craziness, if you will, looseness, chaos, then you need to have some structure that helps guide that chaos and direct all of that energy into the right places. So that way the company is getting what they want and the developer is able to do their job. Because another concern is if you just come in and do a task for a little bit and then you leave, and then you go and do a different task and you leave, well, inherently you're going to lose some efficiency versus if your job is always, I'm going to hammer this nail like 4 times, right?
Yeah, you get really good with a
Yeah.
hammer if you're doing it day in, day out. I mean, you've seen the videos on Instagram of guys like laying bricks or something, and like the pros are just like bam, 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 you know, and
Steamboat Willie.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, you get great at doing something repetitively. On the other hand, like I think some of the things we're talking about here is being a freelancer means having multiple skill sets, and once again, sort of tracking that novelty and sort of having this more enriched, sort of holistic view of what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. And to bring it back to the marketing side of things, Hunter, one of the things that you and I have talked about off air is, okay, how much of this product do I build? And I called what I did with Kickstart Your Kitchen the go into the cave method, which I don't recommend and was not recommended to me either. It's one of those mistakes that I knew while I was making it, but decided it was still worth it for me to make it. And that is, you go into a cave and you create a thing, and then you come out of the cave and you say, "People, I've been in this cave for a very long time. Don't you want this thing?" and then you like scratch your head when people are like, "No."
No.
Well,
So you turn all golem?
yeah, you do.
My precious.
It feels that way too. You feel like that. You're just like, oh my gosh, I like have been working so hard on this thing, and that was actually how I had the realization of, oh my gosh, I should invest in marketing and not just build this product in a cave. I had that, like, what was it, yesterday, at like 4:30 in the morning. And yeah, then and Reed told me, like, at the beginning of my journey, Reed was like, I built a product and I neglected marketing. And so I had the wisdom right there and I chose to ignore it. And I built a product anyways, and I went into the cave. And when I had that I hired a business coach finally, and this person really gave me a rough awakening of like, hey, when that product's done, where are your users? The way he phrased it was, how are you going to get your first 2,000 users? And I felt really stupid because I was like, they'll just come. I was like, I have no idea.
If you build it, they will come,
Yes,
right?
yeah. No, well, I've done the opposite thing. I started a podcast that, hoping to get my 2,000 users or whatever, but now I don't have a product for them. So even if I get them, I mean, I think the idea now is that, because that's the other side of it, is you can pretty quickly get caught up in your own thing and then not have enough time to go into the cave to build the product because you started a whole nother engine that's got to be running the whole time. So it's kind of a chicken egg scenario there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, real quick, since we're talking about marketing, and one of the things that you can do to help with your marketing is engage with your users. And so we actually have a comment from the chat. We have Jay Klaus popping in. He says, "What's up, Reed? Man, this video setup is so great." And I've got to say, this is the first time someone's commented this much on our video setup, so I think it has to do with Hunter's dramatic mood lighting.
I do too.
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna have to get mood lighting.
Yep, we're gonna
Hunter,
have to do
you want to
that.
freelance?
Yeah, nice.
There we go.
So yeah, a couple of really good things there that happened with Hunter over the last, frankly, 24 or 48 hours. But again, I'm sure that stuff's been cooking in his head for a really long time. And one of those is recognizing that, hey, I should get someone outside of myself who isn't just a friend, who isn't just a family member, who has no stake in my position, to tell me about this. And hey, let me tell you about what's going on, and then you tell me what you think. And oh, by the way, you have experience dealing with this type of thing, and you've seen this story play out a whole bunch of different times. Give me some of that knowledge. Help show me the way, show me where I need to go. And when I'm saying this, it sounds a lot like therapy to me.
It does, doesn't it? Having a third party who can kind of comment on your insanity. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, as someone who's a big fan of therapy, but also now a big fan of business coaching, it felt the opposite of therapy. It felt like I needed the therapy for the advice that I got. It was just kind of like, I'm paying this person to tear my business apart and give me these rough realizations. And it's, I think in my opinion, the mark of a really good business consultant or coach or whatever you want to call it is they're just going to be brutally honest. And yeah, this person completely tore down the business and built it back up. And they give you some, kind of action items of like, okay, I've made you aware of the situation you got yourself into. Here are some options. Here's what you can do. Here's what you need to focus on. And that's worth its weight in gold, which is marketing. I need to build an audience. Nobody knows what I'm doing. I am in a cave just playing with Legos. Yeah.
Yeah, and this whole realization of a coach or going outside yourself to get taught, whether it's therapy or whether it's getting a coach in whatever it may be, that was a journey I went on myself. And actually, it was a couple of months ago that I actually hired my first business coach. And it was the most money I've ever spent outside of the RV. I spent thousands of dollars to hire this person. And it's like, how do you do that, Reed? And I was like, yeah, it made me uncomfortable. But I was like, do I think this person is going to help me figure out what I need to figure out so I can be more successful in the future? And in my case, as a business, that also included monetary things. And I'm like, this guy can help me sell at least enough courses to pay for himself, like for sure, right? But realistically, he's going to help me go so much further beyond that. But when it comes to people's lives, even if they don't have a business, they're just looking at the business of you, the business of themselves. I really like this comparison to therapy because it's like, hey, or coming to something like Helpful for Life is let's learn a little bit from somebody who's completely outside, who is they're trying to help you improve your life. Well, let's learn about that. Let's take in that information because we think that it might help us improve our lives going forward. And so in a lot of ways, that's what we're looking to do with Helpful for Life is we're looking to be the coach for you guys out there. We want to be the ones who help show you where to go. We're your Yoda, we show you, here's where you need to do this. Here are all these unseen forces that you can't deal with because you don't know how they work.
Because you don't have midichlorians.
Yes, and we say, this is not the life you were looking for, and we're trying to help people. We're helping them know what they don't know. I had someone tell me the other day, it was like, if I only knew the right questions to ask, then I would know these things a lot earlier. And it's like, yeah, that's what we do. We think of the things you need to know before you even realize you need to know them.
Yeah, I mean, that's, and this is one of the other interesting things about that is, so at one point I was running a truck gallery. It was an art gallery that was inside of a Ryder truck. Course.
Writer.
Yeah. And one of the things was we had so many people tell us, this is such a great idea. You're driving around, you're having all these shows, you're getting your word out. It was marketing and everything else bundled into one. And as a mobile gallery, and so we were going around doing it, and all these people would be like, where is the template for how you built all the walls inside, how you inbuilt the lighting, and everything was these crates, and the crates would unfold to become the walls, and then the pallets would unfold to become the stairs, and they're like,
is this a transformer?
Yeah, it was basically a transformer
Nice.
art gallery. Yeah. And so we built all this stuff, and I was like, man, this is great. And people would say, can we have the plans for how you did it? Show us the path. And we'd be like, sure. And we gave them the plans for free. We were all open source about it. Everything else, no one else did it. So you can show them the path, right? Once again, this kind of Yoda moment. Here is the path. And still, people will not take it. And it's a really fascinating thing. So there's something about hiring a coach, going out of your way and spending some money and saying, like, I know I have this problem. And then there might be something about having to spend the money. It was almost like because we were giving the thing away for free, it was valueless.
Yes.
I don't know what is the weird switch in people's brains.
That's a great transition to the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the sources of funding and how does money tie in to this marketing component. So we're going to get to that in 1 second, but I wouldn't be doing my job as an entrepreneur, as a marketer, if I didn't tell you guys that I also actually became a business coach earlier this year. And we talked about that on a previous episode. And we even had on one of the people who we had as, who is one of my coachees, my players, and his name was Thomas Lightfoot. We had him on really early on and actually talking about mood lighting. We actually had him. He not only was an entrepreneur, but he also played music. And I believe it was the first Friday that we were live. So it would have been episode 4, I think. And we actually had him sit right here. We had the lights all trimmed down low and we had the colored lights behind the couch. It was actually really cool. It felt very much like being on, Jimmy Fallon or something like that when you have the live musician playing, and it was right next to you. It's like, yeah, it's kind of fun. But anyways, the reason I brought him up is because I want to make sure to plug his business, and his business is Honey Auto Detailing. And so you can look up Honey Auto Detailing. We'll throw a link in the chat. If you're in the DFW area, they will come to you. They will solve your problems, and which is a messy car, or those that stain you just can't get out, or that windshield that's always messed up. They will come to you and they will detail your car where you're at, whether that's at home or work or while you're out doing whatever. They will drive the van out to you. And it was great the other day. It was actually this week or last week. I actually saw Thomas out the window, and I was like, "Hey, man, it looks like you're cleaning the car." He's like, "Yeah." He actually had his van made, and he wrapped it. It didn't say Ryder. It said Honey Auto Detailing. But he had somebody at this apartment complex call him. And he had no idea who he was or that he lived here, but they just like saw the van. And so they called, and I was like, dude, that's so satisfying. Like, you did the marketing, you took that risk, you invested that thousands of dollars to raise, or actually he raised it through a crowdfund or a GoFundMe or something to make that van. So then now people can call him and get that payback and that return on investment. So I thought that was a really cool thing. And then of course the last, my other business that I'll plug is Libby's Kitchen and Studio. Libby'sKitchenandStudio.com, I believe. And we will share that link in the chat as well. And Libby makes pre-made meals, and she makes art for you guys, and she brings warmth into your home, and it makes your home feel so much more welcome. And if you have a business or like an Airbnb that you run or something like that, it's the perfect way to help create that environment. As we talked about in previous episodes, how important the design elements are to how they make a space feel. Well, that's what she's all about. And talking about hospitality and caring and loving, that's what Libby is so much about. I can't work with her without putting a smile on my face. So shameless plugs aside for those two, because they deserve it and they're doing good stuff. So let's jump back to the money aspect. So we're talking about there's the sources of funding, and then there's also how do you charge people for the things that you're doing, right? So for Hunter, he's got actually what's called a two-way market, I believe is the term. One of you guys know better than me, let me know. But that's where not only is he selling something to one party, he's actually selling it to two, because he needs the companies and he needs the freelancers. And so that actually makes things a little more complicated. And then it's like, well, which one do you get first? Chicken versus egg, things like that. So that can make things a little more complicated. And it's like, oh, well, how do those people pay you, right? Do they pay him some sort of flat fee? Does he get some sort of percentage of the overall contract or the hourly rate? There's a whole bunch of different ways to structure it. But the thing is based on how you structure it can inherently be to determine your success or failure, because as I'm sure Hunter realized when he was doing some of this freelance work, especially for startups, they don't have that much cash, but they're like, there are other ways they can compensate people, like, oh, maybe I'll give you some of this company and things like that. But then there's also the reality is of, well, Hunter's now a freelancer and he needs to put food on his table, and stock doesn't pay food, at least not for years. And then there's that risk aspect as well. And, even working for a big company like Amazon or Reddit, it's like, well, then there's all these stipulations with what that stock is and when you can sell it and when it's in your best interest to sell it and all that type of stuff. So it gets hairy faster than you think. But the idea of when, as an end consumer, you put money towards something, you are actually more bought in, right? And that's a thing that I really had to think about with Kickstart Your Kitchen. I was like, this is something I want to be available to people of all walks of life. But I also recognize that if people don't invest a little bit of money themselves, then they're not going to have that mental switch that you were talking about that gets them invested in the process, invested in doing the work so that they can then transform. And I've mentioned it before where I've had people come to me like, oh, yeah, great, you can parent my kids. I'm like, no, I'm not going to parent your kids, but I'm going to give you all the tools and knowledge you need to help you figure out what you need to do for your specific situation.
So just like you give them a leash or something?
Yeah, exactly. A leash and some coffee. we were watching that. Go ahead.
Watch him run away real quick.
You're building a platform which scales much better than a service business, right? It's like, I won't raise your kids because that's going to take up, it'll take up a ton of your time.
Right.
But you're a platform. And talking about funding, which hopefully we can get into later, like VCs look for that type of thinking and that type of scalability. Are you building a platform or are you building a services business?
Yes, and that's a very good point. There is a very big difference between how scalable something is and what the total addressable market or TAM, is. And I'm sure Hunter could rattle off probably 25 different keywords that he's learned through this whole process and even before that. But the last thing on whether or not the end consumer, and I say consumer, but that also could be a business, whether or not they pay for something, whether or not they get invested in something is a very important point. And that's why it's like, all right, I priced my thing in a way where, hey, here's one way you can pay for it and this big dollar amount up front, and then there's another way you can pay for it where you're paying a little bit a month, so that way it can be accessible to more people. And of course, we give out a lot of information for free. And one of the things I told Hunter, as we were talking, is like part of being online education or online business, the model pretty much is provide value for free, provide value for free, provide value for free, and then you have the ask where it's all right now. Will you invest in this because you see the way that we work, you see the things that we've done, and we were already providing you value this whole way, versus, hey, I came out of my cave, won't you buy this thing,
Right,
before providing all that value and building the audience beforehand.
Yeah, we oh, man, we need to get back to Hunter. When you were talking about the Nietzsche, like I brought up Nietzsche the other week, and he had this parable of the guy that's on the mountaintop, and he comes down with knowledge, and then he tries to hand the knowledge to the masses, and the masses they hate it. And so he ends up having to change his entire philosophy from the Ubermensch to the last man. And the last man is a disgusting concept, but everyone loved it. And so this was kind of Nietzsche being angry about populism. But it is kind of this fascinating idea that, it's like the reversal of the cave, the sort of Plato's cave into the mountaintop thing. But
Yeah, no, it's interesting because it's, at the end of the day, it inherently affects what it is that you're creating. Is like, again, to point out, like, even if I recognize this is what's best for people, this is the medicine they need, well, okay, I got to put this candy coating on it, and it's got to be in a different form because that way people actually take it, right?
Yes.
So let's transition over to how businesses get funded, right? So Hunter, why don't you tell us a little bit about how the VC model works? Give us the quick, minute or so definition of what does it mean to be someone, a company that's funded by a VC. And I keep saying VC, but I don't know if I've said venture capital is what VC stands for.
Yeah, so there's so much around this topic. I'll try to be brief on it. Essentially, when you the main point I want to make is when you do raise money from someone who describes themselves as a venture capitalist, there's such a thing as dumb money and smart money. So when you raise money as a business, you want to raise from smart money. Smart money are these institutional firms where they're looking at like 600 startups a year and trying to figure out if they want to invest, versus dumb money. And this, I may be offending some people here, and I apologize in advance. Dumb money comes from what you would term angel investors, or your rich uncle, or someone who's maybe high up in the management hierarchy at a firm and has saved a lot of money. You may be the only deal they do for 2 years, right? The idea when you're raising money, though, is the opportunity has to be worth investing in. We all put money in retirement portfolios and expect it to magically grow. That money has to be compounded by people like venture capitalists. And I think the rough awakening trying to get into this industry and raise money from these people is that it's just ruthless and bloodthirsty. It's literally people, all they care about is how do I 10x my investment? How do I? And so everything goes out the door. Everyone has their ideals. Everyone is, like, hey, I want to make the world a better place in this way, this way, and this way. But it's kind of eerie when you get into those rooms and you pitch, because it's like you get to see how the sausage is made and you get to see how the world really works. And it's about how much money you can make for someone. And venture capitalists look for how big is the market you're addressing, and are you capable of solving that problem? And is that problem going to make a lot, is your solution going to make a lot of money?
Yeah. And, just to define a little bit more about the process itself, whether you start off with dumb money or smart money, basically when you have this venture capital model, you start out with a business, you start out with an idea, right? And then you develop it to some extent. Sometimes it starts out as what's called a pitch deck, which is basically a PowerPoint slide and you talking and saying, hey, here's the idea, here's what we're going to do. And then as that business progresses, you do a little bit of work building the product. Maybe you do a little bit of engaging with the users to find out what they want, what they're maybe willing to pull out their wallets for. And then as you move along that process and you get closer and closer to something that looks like a business, well, then there's what's called getting seed money. And I'll let you interject, Hunter, anytime I'm messing up any of the terms here. But seed money is essentially a smaller amount of money, which is between anywhere, I don't know, I would say 25,000 to 150,000 roughly.
So it's going to be it's going to differ where you're at. But typically a seed round can be 500,000 to 2.5 million in normal times. It depends on if you've sold a company before. If you've had a previous success, I have friends who've had previous successes and they've raised anywhere between $3 and $8 million. We're in a very overheated market. So the market's very overheated. Inflation's high, interest rates are low. So you're seeing these gigantic rounds and these gigantic valuations.
Well, it's interesting to see, right, how the overall market can affect things like this, right? And so that's a very important thing to know is when you're dealing with businesses is a lot of it's timing as well, right? If people were around during the internet bubble, right, in the early 2000s, then it was like money. That was actually the biggest rise of the venture capital area because money became so much easier and so much cheaper that all these things started to come into existence. And then
go ahead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say,
one thing.
Tag, you're it.
No, you go.
Okay. So we have the seed money, which another thing. I don't know if you would say seed money can come from angels or what's called an angel investor, which is someone who isn't attached to a firm or something like that, but is more like what you would have called the dumber money, right? And then those people can be providing this seed money. There's also another term called family and friends round. Is that different or the same as a seed round? Kind of, what would you say on
Typically, I love that we're talking about the process. So let's start at the very beginning where you have an idea, you have the inspiration, but you may not have a product. That's where you go around and you're pitching. That's where you're asking for pre-seed money. So you're asking for anywhere from 50,000 to 200K to
See, that's the
develop
term
an initial
pre-seed. Yeah. See,
pre-seed money. That's where you're trying to just get a prototype built. And it's so interesting because you actually want to hold off revenue for as long as you can for those first two rounds. So for your pre-seed round and your seed round, potentially your seed round, you want to hold off on revenue and you want to build up attention. And you see companies like Uber did this when they became loss leaders and they're just trying to capture a market, right? So in the beginning, you're trying to capture a market. So you want to say, hey, I have this many people clicking on part-time job postings, or, I have this many people interested in this product, and you raise based on month over month growth of your engagement statistics with your audience, your customers. Again, it goes back to marketing. When you have that, when you've captured a market and you've built a product that you need to have a product definitely before your seed round. That's where you're going to go into a Series A round. And so the investments in your pre-seed and your seed round are done through a financial instrument called a SAFE. SAFE is essentially saying, I believe you're going to be a company that has a big valuation one day, so I'll give you $50,000 now, and then that's going to convert to equity in your company whenever you have your first priced round, which is typically like a Series A, or sometimes you get a priced seed.
Yeah. And so, Hunter, I'm gonna summarize here and let you modify because we could spend a whole episode just on this, right? But so you have this pre-seed, then you have this seed, and these are just a little bit of money to help you spend a couple of things to get the thing going, right? And maybe that's you're hiring a couple people, maybe that's you're paying, literally just paying for the server space and things like that. And some people are like, wow, that's a lot of money, $50,000 to $250,000. But it's like, But guess what? I'm still working full time, and maybe there's other people on this team with me. And by the way, we came from places where our salaries were, anywhere from 80 to 250K. And then it's like, all right, now go start this company. But, you only have this much money compared to what you used to have. And so that's some of the inherent struggle is you've got this money and it can go really fast. And there's actually this term called burn rate. And that is, okay, month after month, how much of this money are we going to spend? So that way we know, all right, we got this 100K of seed money. Well, our burn rate is 10K. Well, that means we've got 10 months. We got 10 months until we got to do something or less, right? Realistically,
something will always come up.
Yeah. So you raise that money in the pre-seed and then the seed, and then you go into what would be called a Series A, and that's where you raise a lot of money, and that's when you're giving away bigger and bigger chunks of your company. And then you might end up doing a Series B later on, and then a C and a D, and once you get to like E, that's when it starts to be a little low percentage chance of that happening. But eventually, what you do is you convert to either being just completely private or you go public. And that's what some people might have heard of calling an IPO, initial public offering. And that's when they say, hey, we've built this thing and it's valued at, let's say, $10 million. And then we go public and we sell stocks, right? And then people can own little pieces of that company. And so let's say right now it's valued at 10 million, but when it goes public, all those stocks and the price makes it be valued at 15 million. Well, now all of the people who invested in that company earlier on, and the earlier on they got, the better valuation they got, say at the beginning, the company was only worth 500,000. Well, now it's 20x in value. And so those early investors get 20 times their investment. However, there's inherently risk involved with creating a company. And so that's why venture capitalists, they have to make all of these bets on all of these various things. And they do what's called due diligence to check out and say, all right, Hunter's, he looks like a smart guy. He's got the right credentials. He seems like his idea is good. The market seems to be there. It seems like this is going to work out. But when I took a peek behind at what he's actually done so far, man, this guy, has he done enough for us to warrant this risk? And that's the choices that these VCs have to make every day. And it's not just once, but they got to do that, 50 times a week or 200 times a week. And then that also kind of, it makes this whole thing where it becomes a little colder to people like Hunter, because they're coming in and like, I've worked on this for years and this is the culmination of my life's work. And then people are like, nope, that's not going to get me 20x. That's only going to get me 18x. Not good enough. And next, and there's a lot of emotional stuff involved there too, I imagine, right, Hunter?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when you're at your pre-seed round, mostly where that money comes from is, do they like you? So someone needs to like you enough to invest at that stage, right?
And it starts with the hair. I mean, it literally sounds silly, but it can. I mean, that affects people's impressions of you, which at the end of the day can affect whether or not you get money, right?
It does. You need to be able to make a good first impression, and you need to be able to act in good faith. So typically, like for our initial, we're raising a pre-seed round and going into an accelerator. I showed up at these investors run a co-working space and events and stuff. I showed up for 5 months straight and just pitched, and I asked them for advice. So the saying is, ask for advice and you get money, ask for money, you get advice. I was just constantly asking them for input on my business, and they kind of built it with me. So they knew me, right? But in those pre-seed and sometimes even seed rounds, when you're pre-revenue, your business isn't really making money. It's all about your relationship with an investor and your reputation, and can you be trusted? Can you actually execute? Everything is your ability to actually execute. And I believe you actually give away more of your company in the early stages. And when your business is proven out, you're going to be raising more money and giving a smaller percentage away because you're a proven product. Less risk. Yes. The early investors have de-risked the later investors. And what these investors will do is they'll make a bunch of these early investments, where they'll invest 50 to 200K, but it may be like a $100 million fund. And they essentially just make a ton of these investments, but they get so much equity so early that if they make 200 investments, they only need one to take off to really make the fund profitable. And so that's the model that they employ in those early stages, making those early investments.
Yeah, and that's the venture capital model in kind of a nutshell. And again, we just barely started scratching the surface and talking a little bit about that. We may dive into that a little bit more in the future. But another type of model is the bootstrap model, and it gets that name because it's like, oh, you're pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, to use that old phrase, and that is where we are not going to raise outside money from elsewhere. We're going to depend on ourselves and our own money, and then hopefully get to a point where the revenue starts coming and starts being able to generate enough to sustain the business and then in the future grow the business. But inherently, that comes with challenges because one, you got to have a decent pool of money to start with, and then two, as that pool gets smaller and smaller, maybe you're not as able to do those things that you would like to do to be able to grow the business. Well, when you get a big paycheck or investment of hundreds of thousands of dollars, well, then I can hire the best coder, and then I can hire the graphic designer, and I hire this. If you don't have that and you're bootstrapped, then you just have to go to your local sushi restaurant and look for whatever comes up, and then you end up with writer, and you're like, well, we're bootstrapped, so this is what we got. and
I don't even make sushi.
I know.
It's horrible. Like I bring pretty much zero value to this team.
Yes, exactly. And then you get into the nonprofit model, which is about raising money both from companies, a little bit about the VC, similar, like, hey, we want money for this good cause, but without that financial return. And then we also, hey, we want money from the common people, just regular everyday people. Don't you see this as a good cause, but you're not going to get anything financial out of it, right? And so when you have all these different models, it inherently leads to the businesses, the nonprofits getting run different ways, and there's pros and cons to each. And yeah, I mean, it gets complicated really fast, and we didn't even really touch on the art world yet, on how many different models there are within there.
That's a mess.
But the bottom line is marketing
NFTs.
is weird. Yeah, right. NFTs. That's
whatever.
the answer. Art meets science. Perfect.
Oh yeah, right. It's totally perfect.
Exactly. But you have art, and you have art. You have the marketing aspect. You have how the business literally needs to keep the lights on and pay the people. And is that salary? Do you hire contractors? Do you use a freelancing platform? Like Hunter's trying to help raise up. There's a lot of these questions that go into your mind as you're creating an organization that is going to have some. It doesn't have to be public facing, but some people need to know about it.
Yeah, if people need to know about it, Hunter, coming back to the marketing thing, what are you thinking about with that right now? Where are you at with that?
Yeah, well, I had this big revelation just yesterday, and I sent Reed an audio message, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I know what I need to do now." And last night, I wrote a web scraper that is scraping part-time job postings from all of the existing job boards. It's very fragmented. These boards are mostly full-time jobs. So today, I'm going to blast that job board out to social media, LinkedIn, everywhere. And for marketing, there's been people, when I pitch, people will come up to me and be like, "Oh, I love what you're doing. How can I help?" And I have nothing to give those people. I am like, "I'm in a cave building something. You're just going to have to wait. Hop on my wait list and watch the cobwebs collect." But now I have something. I've launched a product. So I have a job board. I'm like, "Hey, if you want to help out, share this job board with your audience." And what I've done with the job board is I've used Amplitude, Google Analytics, Segment, and I have all these analytics that are building up. It's building up information on my audience, on my potential customers. And so I start engaging and measuring. And so I'm going to be running a lot of multivariate tests, essentially just showing different experiences to different users. And I'm going to take a data-driven approach to my business and what I am launching to these customers. But to summarize, I need something to just put in front of these kind of like startup influencers, if you want to call them that. There are people with big audiences that have offered to help me out. And so my initial first 2,000 users is going to be, "Can you share this with your audience, please?" And then capture a sign up. So we're going to make a newsletter and again, Reed told me this way back when because I was like, "Oh, I'm going to build a YouTube audience." He was like, "No, you need to build an email list." And I was like, "Oh, nah." But lo and behold, Reed was right. And so we're going to create a weekly newsletter that sends out all of the new part-time jobs for software engineers that have been posted for that week. So to summarize,
Summarizeception.
get some, yes, get this job by leveraging, relationships with people who have big audiences. I can get this job board in front of a lot of people, and then I capture an email sign up in the job board.
Yeah, so what he's talking about there is when you're trying to capture the audience is, one of the terms that's used is a lead magnet. And it's called that because you are creating a lead for your business. If you're in sales, it's called a lead. Here's someone who I think might be valuable, who might buy our product. Let's put them in a list and say, here is the list of leads. And it's a magnet because it attracts people and it says, oh, here's some value I'm providing to you. In this case, Hunter is providing, hey, here are these jobs that you could apply to. And that gets them interested. That's the mouse and the cheese, right? But then it says, hey, by the way, like, did you like how I provided these part-time options for you? Well, guess what? We're building this bigger, better way of seeing all these things, of filtering through these things, of maybe getting alerts of these things. And, you could shift from this being something you're doing on the side of your day job to this could potentially become your day job if you then take these, this job here and this job here and this job here, and maybe you end up working for 5 or 6 different companies, which I think honestly is the way that the global economy is going. The more and more connected we get, I think COVID has advanced that by a lot too, because it enabled people to feel more comfortable doing video chats and working remotely and things like that. I think 20 years from now, the standard model of working for one company and then saving for retirement, I think we're all going to be like laughing at that because it's just going to be so drastically different than it was.
It's different, but yeah, one of these days we can go off into the counterpoint to that.
Yeah,
which is
downsides for sure.
Yeah, with is no security, no loyalty, everyone's a hired gun. And that's a different kind of world that we get into that has a lot of precarity built into it. There's not foundational security in there because you have a lot of people who are always having to run and gun, and there's a certain level of exhaustion and always shifting with markets there. There used to be people who'd work 40, 50 years for the same company, and they just could go home and work on building their family. So different value systems that will incur sort of different changes in our society.
Yeah, and I for one am really interested to watch it play out, both with the society as a whole and also with Hunter. So I'm sure we'll call on you in the future, Hunter, to get some updates, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about seeing behind the scenes of what it's like making a company. I know I find it interesting, and hopefully some other people out there do as well. But without further ado, Hunter, what if someone, this is like, hey, I actually, this interests me, and maybe I am a software developer myself, or this job board thing kind of sounds interesting. How do they come into your cave? Where should they, what should they do? Should they send you an email, go to a website? What would you like?
I would highly encourage anyone to send me a personal email at hchodnet, my last name, @gmail.com, just to have more of a personal relationship. If you're interested in engaging with the platform that I'm building, you can go to Join Cottage, so joincottage.com, and sign up for the beta. That actually is connected to a Discord channel. And so I get a notification on my phone every time a sign up happens. And we can engage on Discord that way.
Well, awesome. And we'll drop those in the chat and the description and all those good places. But we really appreciate you coming on today, Hunter. When he sent me that voice memo yesterday, I was like, this is perfect. It came in right after we were talking with Angela. I was like, wow, she was just talking about how she's got to deal with marketing and the issues of raising money, having money, and, some fun news for Hunter. I don't actually, I'll let you share it if you'd like. I don't want to, from last week. I don't know if you want to share that or if that's private or not.
Oh, the actual amount we can't disclose, but we did raise our first pre-seed round of funding, and we were accepted into an accelerator that's being run by Draper Startup House. There's an absolutely fantastic team over there. If, for anyone who's in the Austin area, definitely engage with the Draper team. They are just absolutely so much fun to engage with because they're so passionate about startups.
Well, one other thing that I've been telling Hunter is that it's very important to celebrate. And so with that, I think that deserves a great live audience applause. Here we go. Congratulations,
Can I
Hunter.
get
That is awesome. And, I'm giving extra loud claps because I also know Hunter told me, he says, hey, my birthday's coming up in a few days. And I looked up and I was like, I completely forgot, because he's so immersed in doing the thing that he's just like, I forgot to come up and recognize my birthday. So make sure you get some celebrating in there. You've come a really long way. You've had a long journey to get to this point. So go out there and have some fun. And thank you so much for coming on today, Hunter. And you have a good rest of your Friday.
Thank you so much for having me. Y'all take care.
Wow.
Man, I think that could have gone a lot deeper and on longer and longer, and I was super fascinated. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, and you're right, the topic is so broad, and it's just kind of like, oh, and then what about this step, and what about, I know we're summarizing here, but I'm really interested in that step.
Yeah, we're summarizing the summaries.
Yeah.
Exactly. It really gets into it. And I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, oh, man, we're barely getting into this. But hopefully that helped you guys learn a little bit more about the behind the scenes of running a business, starting a business, and some of the marketing concerns that come into play, which, to tie it into our challenge to today, I think the best thing that we can ask from you guys is to share this show, and right now that may be sharing an entire show. If there's one that you really resonated with, you liked a lot, or if there's one that you had someone in your mind that you were thinking about as you're watching it, oh, this sounds a lot like this person, or maybe this person could really benefit from this message right now, then you can share that show. And you can also share a show with a timestamp, and you can say, hey, I really like this episode. Start around 15 minutes in. That's when they start talking about the thing that I think is valuable to you. And we are in the process right now of working behind the scenes of chopping it up into all these little clips for you guys to share. So expect to see some more of that from all of our social media channels. But yeah, that's the challenge for today. Please share our show. And also that can just be good old fashioned, hey, so-and-so, let's talk like humans. And let me tell you about this thing I've been listening to that I've been getting some value out of. Maybe you should check it out. And the other tail of that challenge, if you want to share the show, that's extremely valuable. But another thing that you can do is really valuable to us is engage with us. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you found valuable. Tell us what you didn't find so valuable. Ask us a question. Tell us what's going on in your life. The beauty of you listening to this right now on Friday, December 3rd, 2021 is there's not that many people competing with you for our attention. So frankly, you could ask us a question that's very selfish and is like, hey, I have this problem in my life doing ABC, or, oh, I'm trying to start this company, but I'm wondering XYZ, or, oh, I've got this person in my life who's very annoying and I just don't know how to deal with them. Whatever those problems may be, tell us, and we will literally probably talk about it. It's not that difficult. You can do that in the comments on any platform you're on, which is YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch. Or you can go to our website, helpfulforlife.com, and hit the Contact Us button in the top right. With that, any other thoughts for today?
No. Fascinating topic, and I'm sure we're going to touch on it more.
Yeah, well, good, because you need to get back to work because we're past time, and I need you to start making us some money. Get to it. Well, with that, everybody have a wonderful Friday.